topic today is how commerce changes because of the internet, because of a broadband culture. And it's funny, I live in Basel, Switzerland. Switzerland is number 3 worldwide in the connected ratio in terms of the rating of people using technology. But Switzerland is obviously not a pioneer in using technology like people do out on the West Coast in terms of e-commerce or inventions or software. It's very interesting scenario. So I'm going to have a few topics in this regard. I'm going to publish this presentation when I get to the airport later. I'm flying off somewhere else tonight. I will publish it on mediafuturist.com. That's my website. Just click on presentations. And also, if you use SlideShare, anybody using SlideShare here? It's a place to share slides. It's a fantastic place. I'm slideshare.net, G. Leonard, like my name. You can download 75 shows, just don't print them. If you're into wasting time, Twitter, I'm G. Leonard. I have a quite heavy Twitter stream. I run a company called the Futures Agency. And for many of you who may be wondering what in the world is a futurist, that sounds kind of like a utopian or a madman. And sometimes it is quite mad, in fact. I develop ideas for my clients. I look at scenarios from the next 3 to 5 years, mostly media, technology, telecom, entertainment, marketing, communications. And then I build business models with my clients to help them sort of get into the future. Here's some of my clients. Many of those are companies who are very small, very large, but it's basically all over the map, about 100 companies. And the Futures Agency is it's like a club of people who do this. So if you go to futuresagency.com, you'll see what we do. I have an app, Media Futurist, on the iPhone and on the Android. It's also on the Google phone, which I like, by the way. You can check it out. It works on the Google phone. You have to go to the Android market to get it free. So basically, this is the world that we're heading into. And if you forget about the wire, just look at the network. That's what we're going into. The wire has been dropped some time ago. Marshall McLuhan, who was the original futurist and media guru, very wise guy, 50 years ago, right? He says it's the framework that changes with the technology, not the picture. So if you're saying you're going to have a Facebook profile to sell your services or a Twitter feed, that's the picture. If you're saying you want to learn about social media, that's just the picture. We have to look at the framework. When you talk about social media and online commerce, it's not the little stuff that we're going to talk about here today. It's how the whole situation has changed. So social media is really nonsense, right? Because we're talking about social business. The entire structure of how business happens is changing. Social media is just one tiny piece of this. A really smart guy, that's not Seth Godin, that's Clay Shirky. He said, this is not about technology, the same thing, it's not a revolution when we adopt new tools, it's when we adopt new habits. And that's happening across the world. In India, I do quite a bit of work in Asia, in India and Indonesia. You have, for example, in Indonesia, you have people who never had radio or television, they're watching YouTube on their mobile. Right? They're leaping generations. In Brazil, you have 200 billion people coming online in many places that never actually use the web for anything. The first time they use it is on a mobile device. So if you have kids, I have 2 kids, 15 and 20, when you watch how their behavior changes, that's when you see the future. The habit changes. So for them, for example, music, I used to be in the music business. Thankfully, I left it. So the music industry now is basically, music is a click. It's not even a download anymore. So if the music industry is complaining about illegal downloads, that was yesterday. Right? Today, music is a click. Anything like the music we just listened to earlier, that was YouTube. That wasn't a download, legal or illegal. Doesn't matter. For kids today, music, content, and buying stuff is a click. If you're not on a click, you don't exist. Look at these graphs here. This is from Morgan Stanley Internet presentation, April 2010. If you don't have it, you should download it. Mary Meeker, Morgan Stanley, 50 or 80 pages, really powerful stats. Showing how the world is connecting at 3G, 4G, in terms of the penetration of 4G, and of course, it's basically we're heading into an always-on, interconnected mobile world. That's hopefully not news to you. But look at this graph in terms of the data use. The data use is driven by people with portables and handsets and mobile devices. Imagine what this will do to your business. If people do this mostly on the handset and the mobile device, how is that going to change your business? When somebody can pull up information about you when they stand in front of your store, or when they're at the airport looking at a car purchase or whatever it is, that's going to absolutely change everything. So this is really traditional business. It's a broadcast business. You know, you send out stuff, you're a broadcaster top down, you have money for advertising, you push your message out, it's a push world, right? It's like the MTV world. You broadcast to people who are out there, and today we can increasingly see the broadcast model is failing because it's increasingly ignored and too expensive. This is the problem of newspapers, because they are broadcasting to millions of people at the same time, but the ads are $100,000. So it's becoming ineffective, and it's also costly. It's not going away, but it definitely doesn't have a lot of juice left right now. So this is the world that we're heading into. And I can tell you this world is not an easy world, right? Because what happens when you have conversations? What happens when you have an open system is that you have discussions, that you have disagreements, you have conflicts, you have abuse. You can't be open without opening yourself up to abuse. That's the Facebook, privacy debate. You can't have one without the other. So in a connected world, we're going to have more chaos. Some people say that the internet is like India. Right? It's a total chaos, but somehow it works. Right? I'm not sure that's true, but that's sort of saying, okay, that's definitely what's happening here, is that the network business is exploding. And I'll give you some facts on this. Especially in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, we have a problem with the network business, right? Because what this requires is a conversation with people that we don't want to talk to, right? Because we're busy. We don't have time to make talking part of the job. Right? So that is a problem for us, because all of a sudden we have to actually engage in conversations with people that used to just buy stuff. And that's also because, I have to say things about the music industry. People expect this, right? Hello, world. So basically, in the music business, they've said, we don't want to talk to all these consumers. They're supposed to just buy an iTunes and shut up. Right? But it's not working. The music business has declined from $40 billion to $16.5 billion in 10 years. So, network business, if you look at these stats, companies in North America who have acquired a customer from social media, 50%, right? LinkedIn has 45% people are saying on LinkedIn they've acquired a customer, B2B, through LinkedIn. 30 million people, I think, on LinkedIn now. It's a pretty amazing stat. People are saying that business to business is, in fact, a vehicle of social communication. Right? Acquiring customers, and these stats are even better. The emergent channels for lead generation in technology, number one, 74% in technology are using social media to generate leads. So really simply put, I think eMarketer lined it up in a report where they said, business people are social too. Right? So the whole distinction between what we do privately and what we do in business is kind of falling by the wayside. That's a very American trend, you could say. That's always been that way in America. So the companies that have previously blocked Facebook or YouTube or so, right, they're kicking it on now, because clearly you can do business there. So a very bad idea to maintain that policy. So today we have this, right? We have electricity. Every household has this built in. The future will be, the next step, quite simply this. Let's see if we can. I don't know. Plug in. Sorry, just 1 second here. I don't want you to not hear Nicholas Negroponte, who's a very smart guy. He's showing his presentation of the one laptop per child. Yeah, look.
Prototype XO3 computer 2 years ahead of schedule. The tablet, of which you're seeing a rendering here, will eventually cost $75 US, according to OLPC's founder and chairman, Nicholas Negre.
$75 for this box. And I think by the time we're there, it'll be $20. So today we have water, we have electricity. Tomorrow we're going to have ubiquitous connectivity on mobile devices for very little money or for free. So what's going to happen is that because of this mobile, social, what I call commercial connectivity, we really have to think what that does for our business. How people can find us, how they can track us, how they consume media, what are they willing to pay. And we already have 2.1 billion people on the internet and 4.6 billion on mobile phones. In Italy, 140% of Italians, that means people have two phones, right? As you know from going to Italy, everybody has a telefonini. So basically, what's happening here is that how we do business is going to be impacted by this very severely. All the business models, how we pay for it. And then this other thing is, of course, total fragmentation is certain. Fragmentation means we used to watch 20 television channels, now we have cable TV, we watch 100 channels. But on the internet, we're facing this, right? We have 100,000 TV channels. Google TV, Apple TV, Hulu, Boxy, you know, whatever you can get on the web. Right? So it's basically, if I can watch only exactly what I want, if I can watch TED.com, you know, the videos from the TED conference, the speeches all day long, why do I need the Discovery Channel? That's much better than the Discovery Channel. If I can get shows on demand, do I need cable? Do I need Swisscom if I have the internet? And if I have somebody supplying this. So total fragmentation is what we're going to see, and in the end, you know, we all are people, but we're all different people. So in the world of media, for example, where you can put together your own newspaper, using a thing like the Pulse Reader for the iPad, where you can say, I want these sources to be displayed in my interactive newspaper with a click of a button. You end up in this world where we're basically saying, okay, maybe I zoom in just on this guy, or maybe I zoom in on just this little subsection, or maybe this group of people. Right? The targeting becomes very important. But one thing that's for sure in this regard, what's happening here is that this, the watering can of mass media, is going to be much less effective. It's also too expensive. Why would I pour out the water, which means money, right, in newspaper or television ads or radio or whatever to everyone, and only this little piece of grass here wants to hear the message? That's not going to work. This is, of course, a part of my newspaper. And yes, there's still plenty of people reading the newspaper. But when it becomes very cheap, the device and the connection, people are switching very, very quickly. In America, already 20% of people that have cable TV, have said they would dump cable TV and just go with the internet television, if the right moment comes along. Probably not quite true, but we'll take more time on this. So I propose this. I think it's better to have a sprinkler system than a watering can. Maybe you can have both. You know, if you got enough money, you can do both. It's not either or. We need mass medium for some things. But what's happening right now is the main complaint, of course, of online advertising is that there weren't enough people. That problem is being fixed. Facebook has over 520 million users. Every 6th minute, and not 1 out of 6, is spent on the internet, is spent on Facebook. So 8.5 billion minutes a day are spent on Facebook. I mean, the numbers are staggering, right? So if I can reach people here, and I can put together a sprinkler system that reaches just this one flower that's going to grow for sure with what I'm giving them in terms of the message, that's better. Or maybe it's not better, maybe it's just parallel, but if I can do that, then that's the kind of marketing I need to do. So we're going away from this world of saying, oh, everything is centralized. Mass medium, mass distribution, right, is of course, for example, again, music or film business, you know, if you didn't have distribution, nobody would hear you. Now we're getting to this world, which essentially is as messy as this graph, is a world that's connecting to each other. I mean, this is not news to you if you're in marketing, but the most powerful recommendation for anything, really, whether it's a trip or a bank or whatever, is recommendation by others. Word of mouth. Now you say word of mouse, which is done away with, word of sweep, you could say now, on the other interfaces, right? That is what we're going to see, and of course it's going to really be both. This campaign by T-Mobile is a very plain description of what we're seeing, right? This was in Germany a very successful campaign, Lives for Sharing. I mean, this is like the antidote to what we hear from the film and record business. Life is not for sharing. You're not supposed to share any of this. Right? But of course, that's true on the internet. That's what we want to do. We want to share with like-minded people. So the most powerful marketing you can think of is to find like-minded people and give them something. And have them go away with the message, right? Basically, we're switching from the network, which in America means CBS, NBC, BBC, and so on, to the network. And that change will happen in different countries at different speed, but for example, in developing countries, that's happening right now. Brazil, India, right? Switching to the network node. And here's the problem. If you yourself aren't networked, then it's like the Pope talking about sex. You can't get in the water and not get wet. I mean, if you're going to talk about selling to people who are networked, you have to be networked. You have to connect to others. You have to wait on the network. There it goes. That's the learning process. So the company that I work with, say to the CEO or somebody else who's interested, start a blog just to find out what it's like. What it's like to talk about what you want to talk about, how to get feedback, how to deal with the comments, how to deal with the spam, how to deal with all of the issues, because it changes your perspective, right, when you're actually working in a networked environment. So as a next step, now of course, the internet is not really anymore in these boxes. Computers are gone as the #1 interface to get on the web. It's all switching to mobile. The kids are all going to use mobile devices of all sorts, and basically it's total mobile empowerment. You're in a restaurant, you don't like the service, quick thing on TripAdvisor. Quick tweet saying, waitress is awful. I was on EasyJet three days ago in Malaga. It was the usual disaster when you try to get on board. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about with EasyJet. So I love EasyJet and Stelios, but to get on board of the EasyJet flight is a pain. So I tweeted. I made a photo and I tweeted. Right? And I got a whole conversation going on the internet about how awful EasyJet is the boarding process. Right? After which they emailed me and said, oh, they really want to look at it and fix it and so on and so on. Right? And so, I don't know, let's see what comes out of it. So because I work a lot in the music business and various content industries, this is a potentially painful development. Because really what we're talking about here is that because of these changes, you have to let go of certain elements of control. I mean, you don't get to enjoy the following or the friendship with a consumer or a business partner if you want to totally control them. That would be sort of like having the cake and eat. I mean, what's happening now in content is, and I would call it, really selling 2.0, is that we're switching just the same way, so it's now all about attention and trust, and it's about mindshare. It's actually not even about the product. The product is already assumed that it's better. So for example, Hyundai 2 years ago, or 2009 in America, Hyundai, the car company, they made a commercial saying, okay, because everybody's doing bad, if you lose your job, you can give the car back. And we'll give you all the money back that you paid so far, if you lose your job. And they published a campaign, and within a very short time, the sales for 2009 were up 16% in America, while everybody else was down 35%. And the key question is their car any better? Well, the answer is, nobody knows, nobody cares. It was a trust exercise. You tell people that you understand and you're willing to make an exception, to do something. Right? Trust and mind share. So here's our own national airline, Swiss. I don't know who cooked up this idea, but it's a great idea. Swiss has a thing called singfrancisco.com. They launched it, they sent me an email a couple of weeks ago. I looked at it, because I do want to believe that they have good ideas. I want to believe, and now they do. But in any case, what they do is they said, okay, if you want to go to San Francisco, which they started flying again, you can record a video about going to San Francisco, you know the song, right? And the best ones receive free tickets. And so, this is their video. This is the official version of Swiss. And you're supposed to dress up and, you know, do this thing. Of course, you don't have airplanes at home, so it'll be hard. And this is what people are doing, right? It's kind of weak, for some reason. Well, I would say they didn't win, right? I mean, that's quite clear, right? But here's the interesting part. Why is this interesting, right? Because they finally realized, A, YouTube is a mass media tool. It's a tool that everybody likes and does. The engagement, the song, right? All these things. I mean, basically the idea is like this, right? And it's spreading like wildfire now. Lots and lots and lots of people are interested in this all of a sudden. Not that they need really promotion to go to San Francisco, but the idea is fantastic, right? That's the kind of idea that you want, right? And now that you've seen this sort of viral scenario, most credible sources for information about a brand are consumers. It's not the CEO of Nokia talking about how great the phone is. Nobody believes him. Well, some people believe him. Maybe more people in the future, hopefully. I like Nokia, but in any case, it's also the good news is that the brand itself is a source of information. So don't lose track of those two things. Those are the two things that matter. What you say about yourself, but what others say about you. And how will they say anything about you if you don't give them anything? You don't participate, you don't publish anything. You're not visible. Now I get to speed. The world is speeding up at a crazy pace. And if you think it's fast now, just give it another 3 years. If you look at the stats here, right? Radio to reach 50 million took 38 years, Facebook 2 years, and what's next? The iPad, 12 months, 6 months to reach 50 million. I mean, it's absolutely explosive. So Bill Gates, who's by and large a pretty smart guy, he says it will always overestimate how quickly it will happen and underestimate what happens when it actually happens. In other words, we're now living in a pivot point economy. We're living in an economy that goes like this, and then it just dies, or it just goes boom, and there's a takeoff point. It's not linear. It's not like gradually growing, they say, okay, now is the right time to do something. It doesn't work that way anymore. It comes to a point where you're either in or you're out, and when it takes off, you have to be in it. So that makes life a little bit harder. Right? Obviously, you have to move quicker and probably earlier. So our world is as confusing as a slide. We're all connected. We're all consuming all kinds of stuff. 2 billion videos watched on Facebook a month. As far as I'm concerned, apart from YouTube, that makes Facebook the biggest broadcaster in the world. Much bigger than Swiss or German television or the BBC, with the audience and the people. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So connectivity, mobile and social is changing the very definition of selling, paying, and of course value. And that's the painful part. Like, people are now interested in open scenarios. They want to have transparency. They're afraid of getting ripped off. And they want to be able to track you and see who you are before they come to you. So whatever you are selling now, whatever business you are in, you're in the audience business. You're a rock band. Your business is playing in front of the audience. Of course, I understand this part very well, but that's the bottom line. Your audience wants to see you dance. Your audience wants to see what you look like, what you're thinking, how smart you are, what you've published, whether you can be trusted, whether you are connected, or whether you just want their money. So that's a very important point, is now all of a sudden leaders and companies are becoming connectors, not just directors. So you see in America, 40% of Americans are on Facebook, American CEOs are on Facebook. You can Twitter the chief editor of the Wall Street Journal, and he'll look at it. Because they want to be connected, and they have a benefit from making the connection. So if you're running a business and you're just directing, you're missing out. Because that process is a process that's going to be extremely powerful, much more powerful than being a director. If you just want to be a director, you have to be Steve Jobs. You have to be brilliant, you have to be a benevolent dictator. You have to just be the greatest, period, right? If you want to just run everything. And it's possible, as Apple's success has proven. But it's rare. If you want to be like just a director, I think it's 1 out of 100,000 cases where it works. So now it's better, I think, to connect with people, to have an open system. Kodak has this guy, Jeffrey Hayslett, who's the chief marketing officer of Kodak. You may remember Kodak. Kodak sold $2.1 billion of films before the internet. Then digital films came up and Kodak said, this is all bullshit. We don't want digital photos, they don't work. It's bad. Their sales went from 2 billion to what, I think 200 million. They were dead. So they decided to turn it around and do what people really want, which was digital photos. Right? And I hired this guy who was tweeting and twittering and blogging and speaking about Kodak, who single-handedly with his team created a whole wave of support of Kodak. Check out his Twitter feed. So this brings me to the issue of distributed commerce and what people call social commerce. This is sort of a misnomer in itself, obviously. I mean, every social contact can result in some commerce, right? But now we have this really interesting fact where Coke, for example, has 2.5 million followers on Facebook. Right? They're creating commerce through a platform of conversation. Do they actually sell Coke? They, of course not, but they sell the brand. Facebook now, 4 weeks ago, became the box office for Toy Story 3. You could buy tickets from Disney, or Pixar I think it is, right? You could buy it on Facebook. You're going to see this become the default, right? Basically the selling and the commercial part as part of your social network. And that's a Twitter stat that I don't have to comment about. Forrester Research has a great slide I found on the internet, which they told me in the bottom line don't use ever. But in any case, I'm going to use it here because it's a good report. You should buy it for only $5,000. But the era of social commerce, that's really what we're looking at. We're entering in the area back from the social context, the social economy, the social functionalities, now to the era of social commerce, where we are connecting and trusting what other people are recommending from us. If you're not part of the social environment of the exchange of information, then you're missing out on this part. Does anybody know how many Elvis impersonators in the world exist? 36,000 people are impersonating Elvis. I tried it myself when I was a musician. I wasn't, that's not me, but I don't look much like Elvis. But what's happening on the web is that connecting to people like myself, that's the power of the web. Right? All of a sudden we can find people who have the same interests, who may buy the same stuff, live in the same place, have the same concerns. So on the web, all of a sudden this is becoming a very, very powerful thing, what Seth Godin calls the tribes. And if he wrote a book called Tribes, I think that's what it's called. So if you want to do business with a tribe, you have to be inside of the tribe. The tribe that's around whatever it is, hiking or shoes or whatever, right? And this idea of the tribe, of course, is the Twitter idea. That's why people try Twitter, because it creates tribal relationships with all the noise that goes with it. So the power of like-mindedness on the web is just absolutely mind-boggling. Right? Facebook users saying, okay, they're more likely to buy a product if they see it on Facebook because of that. And this thing, you've seen this on the web, right? The Facebook like button. What does that do? Well, it tells you that some of your friends have also seen it, liked it, and that means a whole different cup of tea of whether you may look at it or not. So that's a very, very powerful tool. So I want to give you a few examples of network businesses. Because we're always talking about theory here, but I'm not talking about the future, by the way. This is already here. You may have in Switzerland another 2 or 3 years to get used to this, maybe 1 year in Germany, maybe no time at all in America. Right? But these are trends that are happening across the world. So, for example, CNN has a thing called the iReport. They allow people to upload photos and videos that they have made with their mobile devices to iReport, and then the CNN editors pick the ones that they like, and they publish them on live television with your name. That's the benefit that you have, right? You don't get paid for the photos. You get mentioned with your Twitter handle. It's vastly successful, very simple to do. They involve the user to upload the content. BMW is crowdsourcing the car electronics system. Crowdsourcing means they're asking people who are students and developers around the world to send them submissions for what the next car electronics system should look like. So they're actually going way beyond the engineers. They're saying for each one of our engineers, there's probably 500 others who are students or whatever they are with great ideas. And they're using this. So crowdsourcing, huge trend. Harley Davidson has a community that they support about riding the motorcycle. It has no sales, no promotion, no nothing. It's just a page for people to meet, to talk about rides and stuff that they do. Amazon crowdsources public relations. Dell has 27 people doing nothing but Twittering. And they said last year, because of this, they sold 7 million computers just straight through the tweet. Right? But all of the PR people and marketing people have been switched to take care of this social media as a CRM tool, customer relationship management. The Guardian in the UK newspaper is publishing all of the content in an open API. You can replicate the Guardian entirely on your own website by just tapping into the API. And that creates a huge amount of connection and goodwill amongst the partners. And finally, Ford. CEO of Ford is Twittering, and people are actually saying, I don't know if this is purchased, but I only bought a Ford because of Twitter. Maybe it's a lie. I wouldn't buy a Ford anyway, but you know, no matter how much they Twitter. But in any case, I mean, it shows you what people are doing. So basically the future of selling is this. The future of selling is to connect with like-minded people and give them something that excites them to come back, that attracts them, to have a conversation. So the question I have for you, are you and your company providing enough what I call social oxygen? If you're mute, you're not having conversations. You're not publishing anything. All you do is send out faxes or emails or whatever hard copy press releases, whatever you've got, right? You're not providing social oxygen. You're clogging up the pipeline and killing trees. So here's an easy way to fix it. Percent of the 50 top retailers in the US that offer video on their site went from 18% in 2008 to 68% in 2009. So very easy to say that probably every single major retailer will have video. Whatever your company is, you have to have video. People want to see what you look like, what your products look like, how it works, you know, all these things. Very, very simple stuff. All of you have seen the iPhone and the iPad blender. Will it blend? Yeah? Anybody? I'm not going to show you this video. You can look it up on the web, right? So there's guys, I forgot the name of the company now. It's not a very good sign for their marketing. But these guys, LabTech, right? LabTech. Huh? Blendtech, yeah. They put an iPhone and an iPad in a blender and they crush it up on video. And this was the biggest promotion they ever did, and it cost them $200. It's huge. You should take a look. That idea was obviously right along those lines. So this is old advertising. Old advertising is essentially noise making, disruption, and of course, severe lying. I mean, feed your baby Coke because, you know, it's a good thing. Right? So, on the internet, none of this is working. Right? I mean, clearly, noise-making, interruption, lying, all that stuff that advertising is well known for, that's not going to work on the web. We're going to ignore it and switch it off and filter it out. 80% of internet users have said they do everything they can to avoid advertising. So no wonder that CPMs and Facebook and YouTube, you know, it's working to some degree, but it's not huge. Right? Nevertheless, this kind of stuff, worldwide, $500 billion is spent on advertising, on noise making. You can expect most of that money to shift towards the idea of generating trust, the idea of creating value, right? The idea of doing this, where you say the noise becomes a process where I'm going to support a conversation. Lots of campaigns have already proven this, basically going into engagement and attraction. So advertising, in a way, you could argue advertising becomes content. For example, Nike invented the shoe that connects to the iPod, that connects to the internet, the running, you publish your running data. Right? That was the most successful plan ever for a new shoe. That wasn't even an invention of a shoe, but just connecting the shoe to the internet. BMW has a lot of great applications, and so does Audi, where you can drive around on your mobile phone or on a computer doing a test drive, and that's the ad. So creating stuff that's more like content. So I call this advertising 2.0. You may call it with-vertising, which means advertising with the customer. Convertising, which is more like content. And me-vertising, which means that I get exactly the kind of ads I'm really interested in. And believe it or not, I'm interested in advertising if it's 100% a fit. If I have indicated I'm looking for a cruise ship, you know, a tour, and I get it at the right time and I look at a short clip, that's more like entertainment, but it's relevant. It can also be very scary because of the data issues. So this is all of those. With advertising, right? These guys here. Content advertising and me-vertising. And it costs them nothing. It costs them literally putting up a web page. Of course, you know, fairly easy idea, you know, in their position to do this. It's not quite that easy for others. But anyway, engaged, mobile, social, emotional. You guys know Etsy? Okay, Etsy is an online store where you can buy from people who create weird handicraft of all sorts, from socks to shoes to whatever, right? And this is something you can put on your MacBook. You can put some sort of customized thing on here, right? And it's basically the Snow White MacBook cover, right? And you can order it directly from the maker. And the revenues of Etsy are just absolutely mind-boggling, right? I mean, just exploding. The same goes for Zappos and other companies like this. So what they do is they make it personal. They personalize it, and you make a connection with the creator, with the person who's actually doing this, being part of a tribe. Next question. How do you talk to your customers, whether it's B2B or consumers? These graphs, again from Morgan Stanley, they show very simply that email is just about dead as a useful instrument. Email is powerful, no doubt. I use email, obviously. But what you see happening for the first time ever, we see social networking surpassing email as a tool of communication. So that doesn't mean you should give up email, obviously not. I mean, I have, but I wouldn't advise it really to you, but I've scrapped my 17,850 email newsletters. Because people follow me on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, they get my message, or they just ignore it, I don't care. But the pushing mechanism is going to be hard to do, it's also expensive. So what you see here for the first time ever is the relevance of email declining as compared to talking to people in social media and on the web. So ask yourself this question. Then we get to the next question. If you do talk to your customers, and what do? It's basically now storytelling across all platforms. So when you tell the story about your company or about your products, you're going to use games, you're going to use films, you're going to use mobile versions, maybe applications, you're going to use the web, you're going to use all these channels. And you're also going to be received on all these channels. That's something that's really changing how we create campaigns. Here's a great example, Fiat in Brazil. I do quite a bit of work in Brazil. I didn't do this one, but it's a very interesting place. And what Fiat in Brazil has said, you know, Fiat didn't have a very good reputation in Brazil. So what Fiat said is that Let's go out and say to people that you can submit ideas how to make Fiat a better car, and we'll buy the ideas from you. So they put up a website where people publish ideas to Fiat, and Fiat engineers go through it to improve the car, and this made the sales go through the roof. Even though not necessarily ideas weren't necessarily realized in the car, but the involvement of the user is what created the trust that Fiat cares. Fantastic idea that's taken off like a firecracker. Pepsi. Do you know this campaign? Okay, Pepsi has said, okay, we're going to put, I think the total is $15 million or something like this. Putting into a pot of money that says, if you have a good idea how to make the world a better place, you can publish it on Pepsi. And you can say, buy book bags, upgrade equipment at the radio station, do sort of I mean, all kinds of ideas. And then other people vote on it. And you get funded by Pepsi. Pepsi says, it's a great idea, here's $100,000. Giving money away to great ideas how to make things better. It has absolutely nothing to do with drinking, or drinks, or soft drinks, or anything. So Pepsi's positioned themselves as funding ideas. So that leads me to this question, which is a weird question. The future of selling is getting something. That's a key question, I think, when you think about can your company give something that people will like? It doesn't have to be money, obviously, it can be other things, right? Can you give something that makes people really like you or want to talk to you? Can you do something that gets this kind of buzz? So I'm going to wrap up, and then we have a few more questions. And basically, this is from a company called Scholz & Friends, by the way. Great video. Check it out on YouTube. What we're seeing in 2015 is that all brands, all companies will have to be networked or they're dead. Because really quite simple what it means, when people are connecting to each other like they do now already, and they're creating tribes, if you're not found in this network, you basically don't exist. Because you're always outside. You don't have anything to offer. You don't add value. And that's true for record labels and movie companies and newspapers as well as it is for brands. You have to be talked about. You have to be part of a network. That's why you should start this process now. Because in a few years, everybody will be looking to do business by people recommended to him, or by people who have checked out in the social network. This app from Google, it's very interesting. It works on the Nexus phone. I'm not showing this because I'm at Google. I like it as an example. This shows you what real-time commerce looks like. Right? On this mobile phone, which I think this will become a standard across the board, you can scan a barcode or a product, and it will give you immediate feedback on what people in the social network around you are saying and where you can buy it and price comparison and everything. So when you're in the bookstore, right, you can speak the name of a book title and it will fetch information from everywhere on the web in a live feed. And as Marshall McLuhan says, media really is the extension of man. It's becoming real time. Real time. That means if you run a restaurant, nobody cares what last year's Guide Michelin says about you. Some people still care, obviously, and that's good. But by and large, people will search in an app and it will say, yesterday somebody said the food was terrible. Yesterday. People want real-time information. So I call this nowness. I mean, it's not my term, but I found it somewhere. Whatever you are selling, you have to develop some sort of nowness. People have to be able to say, what is happening now? And what are your offers now? What is the feedback? What is the critique? And how can they do that? How can they come to a website that you set up 2 years ago that hasn't been updated? I mean, that's killing the whole idea of that you actually exist. This is like a page of a book from the Stone Age. And that basically is really bad look on slide. There's only one really important thing about this. This shows the e-commerce take-up in the last few years. Now, if you're looking at this one, that's the most important one. Right, is mobile e-commerce penetration is taken off very quickly. It took a long time, but you can expect this curve, I think, in 3 years to be the same as the regular e-commerce curve. That means mobile commerce is going to be a very, very big deal. Because everybody has smart devices, is always connected to others, and networking. Final point, piracy, downloading stuff for free. This is a great example of misunderstanding. A lot of people on the web are talking about, well, everywhere, talking about how people like to not pay online. Nobody's willing to pay for music, it seems, or movies, or newspapers. Well, the fact is, of course, that's just not true. I mean, if you look around on the web, people are paying for so many things. 500 million people are paying for dating. Dating $50 a year. Farmville, which is a game on Facebook. I hope you don't know Farmville because it's quite something. You get sucked in quickly. Right? People pay for Farmville to buy a virtual tractor so you can drive around on Facebook.com. Right? $250 million revenue last year. In Asia, $2.5 billion sold of virtual goods. I sent you a virtual flower. It costs real money. People are buying stuff. Content commerce on the web is going like this. And mobile as well, just not in the right way. So what this chart shows is research from CNET and from News.com in Australia. It shows basically people are willing to pay, but the biggest problem is that, you know, for example, here you can say, well, if a song costs 50 cents, 50% of people have said they'd be willing to buy it legally, and the rest says never, I pay nothing. But what if you ask this question, you say the song is 10 cents? Would this pie be 100%? I think it would. Can you sell it for 10 cents? Yes, because it's not a rivalrous good. It's not a table. Right? When I make a copy of a song, it's not gone. I can make another. So bottom line is, and this is very important for commerce, value, price, reason to buy, timing, packaging, and trust. That's how you get people's money. And there's no recipe. This is the other part. You can't have a recipe. If Rupert Murdoch says he wants to charge people to read the Wall Street Journal, or whatever he's got, if he can do it, more power to him. But in general, I think the key is to find the combination of these factors. Price, value, reason to buy, and timing. Why are we buying applications for mobile phones? $3 here, $5 there. The average iPhone user spends $3.80 a month. For what? It's already more popular than music. It's amazing. Why are we doing this? Because it appears to be interesting, right? Timing, ease of use, payment built in, trust. Maybe Android will go in the same direction. There's a huge market there. So if you're trying to sell something, think of a wipe-out proposal. Value, price, reason, timing, packaging. Don't think I have enough time to get into this. How much more time do I have? Anyone? Just gonna let me talk forever, is that it?
About 5 more minutes.
Okay, yeah, I'll talk about this because it's important. Oil. Oil is a big topic, right? As you know, of course, we're running out of oil, but this is the interesting part, and special significance because we're here at the epicenter of the new oil, which is data. Data is the new oil. And how do I mean this? I mean, basically all of us, because of what we're doing online, are creating mountains of data. We're forwarding a link, we're sending emails, we're making a comment, we're rating, we have cookies, you know, we're creating and creating, basically it's exploding. There's 850 billion petabytes of information on the internet. That's enough to fill up 13.5 billion iPads, right, with data. 75% of that is made by users. Every single company in the world wants our data. Wants to know where you live, what you look like, what you like, who you connect to, what you like to buy, how much money you make. That data we are selling. We're the consumers, we're saying, okay, you want my data, give me something. So Google is giving us Gmail, so we let it read our email. Facebook is giving us a platform to connect with our friends, so we give Facebook some videos that we stole from YouTube. But in any case, we are contributing, right? Data is becoming the most powerful thing in the world. Without data, Google is dead. If we refuse to share our data, we have a big problem. Marketing can't be happening without data. And now we have this huge conflict brewing saying, okay, what's the deal? Right? But the deal is really the same than ever, which means I give some of my data, I give some of my privacy to receive something back. And that could be free services, it could be added values, it could be something else. But basically data is the new oil, and this question is going to have to be refined. So this is my pledge to Google, since we are at Google, right? Trust is the most important thing. Right? If you break people's trust as far as data is concerned, you're finished. So keeping the trust is the most important part about it. So with your clients and your customers, if you use their data, please don't break their trust, because you're dead. So that's a very important part of the data issues. And you know, there's a campaign about leaving Facebook called Open Book. Take a look at it, it's quite funny actually, the arguments to leave Facebook. So to get to the end, I said this earlier, B2B spending on social media is exploding because it really works to generate leads through social media. That's just sort of a summary. And I can see many of you saying, well, all the stuff you said, you know, it looks like we have to redo everything. So it's a bit of a shock therapy I'm giving you here today. But my answer is to you, yes, you can. You can do this, because that's where everything is heading. And I think it's really quite obvious if you watch people doing it, none of that what I said today is new to you. If you watch people around you, how they live and how they do this. So you can download my app. Thanks for your attention. Here's my Twitter and so on. And I think we may have time for a few questions if you want. So I'm going to upload this presentation sometime later. You know, maybe Wi-Fi aboard, I don't know. But, and then you can download from our website, mediafuturist.com. Thank you.